record button.
You're recording.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee and Finance Committee to order at 6:34 p.m. And I'll open up our portion, the Budget and Finance Committee portion of the meeting. Nathan, you want to open up your meeting?
Sure. I will open up the Bridgewater Finance Committee meeting, joint meeting with the Town Council Budget Subcommittee at 6:34 p.m.
Okay. We just have a couple of quick items we'll take a vote on, and then we can move on to the items. So we have minutes from our February 2021 meeting. Sean, you were not at that meeting, so I'll entertain a motion from Matt.
Motion to approve.
And I'll second that. And any discussion, Matt?
No.
And Dennis, no. So Matt? Yes. Yes, Matt?
Yes, sorry.
Dennis, yes. And Sean, I'll put you down as abstain. Then we have minutes from our February 8th meeting, which was a week ago. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Sean, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
Nope.
Sean?
None.
Sean, yes? Yep.
Yes.
Yes, Matt?
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0. So those things are done. So now we'll move on to, unless you guys have things you need to vote on. Do you guys have anything?
Well, we just have the one thing. We have order FY 21-030. I believe the Budget Subcommittee that you all voted on last meeting.
Right.
So we just need to take care of that real quick.
Yep.
Tony, you're there, right?
Yes, I am.
If you could just give the committee just a quick synopsis on this order here, just for our newer ones.
Which order do you have in front of you, sir?
FY 21-030, acceptance of non-recurring revenue to capital.
Yes, that's every year. The Bridgewater representative requests from the state an amount to offset some of the related costs for the prison that's located here in Bridgewater. We've been fortunate enough over the last number of years to obtain this amount based on his request. It's a separate legislation at the state. There have been over the last 5 years, I've been here, 5.5 years, I think there were 1 or maybe 2 years we did not receive that. So this action is to, and what we have done, we consider this a non-recurring revenue because that in fact is what the representative wants us to understand it to be, that we should not build this into our budget. So what we have done is build this into a source of funding for our capital. And so this order in fact moves that revenue directly into our capital stabilization fund so that it can be used for capital expenditures at a subsequent time.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Do any of the members of the committee have any questions?
I'm good. No question.
Entertain a motion?
Julie, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Julie. Second?
Chris, second.
Thank you, Chris. Josh, you're here. Can you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Nate,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Chris,
Yes.
Julie,
Aye.
Susie.
Aye.
The motion was approved.
Thank you.
So the only other thing we have for legislation referred is the resolution. I don't know, Tony, if you have something to share with us on the budget resolution or.
Well, there was an exhibit that I wanted to kind of review with you briefly that gives an idea of what 1.75% looks like if that was the goal adopted by this group, the Finance Committee, Budget Finance Subcommittee and Council in the
Tony, can I interrupt for 1 second, please?
Yes, sir.
Dennis, don't we have to vote on the acceptance as well?
Yes. The budget resolution was sent to the council and referred to us.
No, I'm talking about the non-recurring revenue.
Right.
Don't we have to vote to accept it as well?
No, we did that. Matt and I did that when you weren't around. You were-
Oh, okay. Well, it's good to know you guys are getting things done without me. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, all right. So now we're on the budget resolution. Sorry.
All right. So if the group feels that that would be a beneficial exercise, I would be glad to just give you a quick little one slider to kind of show where that comes from. Okay.
I think it would be
So
helpful,
I'll-
but we haven't voted on the 175 yet, though, right? That's what you're proposing?
Well, no, what I'm trying to do is give context. That's
Okay.
it.
All right. Yep.
Nothing
please
more
do.
than giving context.
Okay.
So, because the last time I think we spoke, there was a question as to what last year's free cash was, and where did that go? And it was more than what we had planned, so forth and so on. So let me try to give you a context. If I can find how to share here. I haven't done this in a while. Let's see. Okay. So the document I want to show you is last year's, okay? And I'm going to hide a column here just so you can kind of see. Mr. Gallagher mentioned last year our total free cash was $2,205,366, which is certainly more than 1.75% of this year's estimated budget at this time. What I think is important to note is I have to pay attention to some of the things that are just abnormal, and how that impacted that total free cash number. So I think it's important to revisit what was presented to you guys sometime in October regarding, where's the free cash come from? Where does that undesignated fund balance come from? So the majority of the dollars will come from your local receipts. So this group here accounts for approximately $1.4 million. Of that $1.4 million, of the 2.2, we received one-time licenses and permits. What I mean by that, we had some major projects that occurred either in the DIF, that's the district incentive financing area in the town, or through permits from the Bridgewater State University for wiring permits that do not flow, and it's not something that we normally see. So there was a spike in that area that was considerable, probably $300,000 or $400,000 above the norm. The other area where we were able to get some benefits was the fact that we're having difficulty filling a number of positions. So there was a lot of turnover that was going on in the police department. There was some going on in the fire department, but there was also positions we couldn't hire for in the highway department. So we had a $930,000, which we did not spend out of our operating budget that year. So if you were just to take the 1.4 million that I showed you that relates to local receipts, and you add the 930, you can see how you get very close to the $2.2 million. Well, we do budget, and we haven't adjusted our budgets because we couldn't hire someone a year or so ago. Because again, this free cash was from the operation for FY20. So I just wanted you to kind of see that there are some major drivers that impact that. The other thing I would want to mention is, where did that money go? Well, we replenished the stabilization fund because we had used $1.56 million in our FY '21 operating budget. So when we got our free cash certified from FY '20, we were able to replenish that to get us back to the $6 million, 10% goal. That left us with approximately $645,000. 400 went to the capital stabilization, 100 went to our OPEB trust, and then 145 went to our unfunded liabilities as they relate to sick leave and separation. So you can see how the $2.2 million was spread and how it was used. If we didn't have $2.2 million and we only had $1 million of free cash, then we would not have been able to replenish our capital stabilization fund, our general stabilization fund, and we would not have been able to fund other areas which require some funding or some other way of paying for the capital items and or for the separation costs related to retirements. So then the question becomes, what does the FY '21 looks like before we get to FY '22? So I will go through the same exercise. Is where is the majority of our local, our free cash or estimated free cash going to come from? Well, we envision approximately, if we're going to receive this year, and I believe our undesignated fund balance or free cash will be high this year, and I'll give you the backdrop to that. So right there, I'm looking at $1.6 million in local receipts. That's very high. Maybe $235,000 coming from our local receipts that's not part of our revenue sharing. Those local receipts offset costs that we incur in the fire department and relative budgets that perform certain services outside of their norm, up to the general public where they collect. Fire alarm box fees and inspection fees is an example. I think that we send out 2 or 3 individuals, or at least 2, to go out and do the fire alarm inspections. And we get a fee, but that's really paying for the time that those individuals are out there doing that. So we look at a fee that offsets our costs of operation. We're looking at about 400 from our operating budget, again, because we are struggling to hire some key positions in the highway department. And we do anticipate, due to turnover again in the police department, that will be some significant payback to the, or hitting to the bottom line of our undesignated fund balance. The reason the impact is going to be so high here for our motor vehicle and our other local receipts here that are part of our revenue sharing, we didn't get our final numbers from the governor until sometime late October, beginning of November. When we finally got those numbers, they were level funding what we had received in FY '20. But when we put together our operating budget, we did not include that. And all of our funding and all of our decision-making was made around not having that money, because we did not get final notification, as I said, until late October, November. One of my responsibilities when I put forward the numbers to the recap, which is how we set our tax rate with the DOR, is I need to then make an adjustment to our local receipt budgets. Because if I did not make an adjustment down of our local receipt budgets, we would have ended up having excess levy capacity. So if you look at our budget resolution in the past, we have spent up to the maximum allowable levy. That has been part of the guidelines. So in order to balance the budget and just use use all of the maximum allowable levy, I made an adjustment down on our local receipts. That was for approximately $400,000 at the time, somewhere between 350 and 4. So you can see how that's going to drive our free cash for this coming year higher, because the local receipts are going to end up driving it, just from the basis of my adjustment down on those budgets, we're going to start with a basis of $400,000. So let's say we looked at where that money would go this coming year, because I'm already thinking, and what you will see before you in the next 2 to 3 weeks is a capital improvement program, which has some significant demands for capital outlay, capital equipment outlay for both the town and the school. So in thinking, if we do have this type of surplus, we'd be looking to put 1.2 or almost $1.3 million into our capital trust, $100,000 into our OPED, as we've been doing for the last 4 years. And we put some additional money into our employee liability trust because we have a number of aging out police officers and or retirees just because they're choosing to retire in both the police and the fire. So we know what, or we're starting to see the pattern of retirements happening in the police department. And we would expect two to three within the next 2 years. And that alone could be an accrued cost at this time of about $200,000 to $300,000 just for those 2 or 3 retirees. So that's my mindset when I am coming up with, working with Mike, Mr. Dutton, what do we think we need? We understand that the number one funding source for our capital for the last 4 years that we've been putting together a pretty more robust capital plan or capital budget before the council. And I believe in the meeting that I showed about a month or so ago, the millions of dollars that have funded new capital equipment have come primarily from our capital trust. So then if we go on what's going to happen in 2022. So for me to figure out what 2022 free cash is going to be, I have to look forward not only for the next 5 months through the end of this fiscal year, I got to go out another fiscal year in order to determine what we should have in reserves after the results of operation of FY22. So you can see that in itself lends some challenge at the very least to what we come up with. So one thing I do know what we're doing in our FY22 budget, we are pushing our motor vehicle excise tax up further. We're pushing our meals tax back up further. We're looking at pushing our other excise tax back up further because we're not seeing the negative impact as drastically as I thought we would see through half of FY21. So when we were formulating the 21 revenue estimates, I was taking into consideration the worst case scenario because no one knew. A lot of the state agencies or the advisors to the state regarding revenue, they were suggesting 20 to 25% reduction in sales tax and reductions in income tax. So there was a concern of mine that was, I think, valid as being presented not only by the governor but also by the agencies that they employ to in fact make recommendations to the governor and to the State House for their budgeting revenue determination, which they do each year, usually around January. They have, I call it a budget summit, if you will, revenue summit. So all of those things are going on. So if I was to say, where will we be at the end of FY22? This is what 1.75% looks like. So if we look at the top here, I would plan on not putting any additional money into the stabilization fund, general fund. I'd be looking to put at least $800,000 in our capital, 100 into our OPEB, and another 200 into employee liability. That's $1.1 million or 1.75%. So then I take that, and then I take another step back and go, what does the school have for capital items that they have presented on their capital plan for the town of Bridgewater for 21 and 22? They have $3 million. what does the town of Bridgewater have right now on its capital plan for capital outlay for the next 3 years? We have $2 million. So there's $4 million right there. And of course, we're not going to spend all of that because the process is going to present the capital improvement program. The town manager will, once we finalize it over the next 2 weeks, look at our 5-year forecast. What do we think the next 5 years is going to look like? And then come back and submit a request for actual appropriation of capital. All of that's going on while I help the town manager formulate his thoughts that will impact or have some sort of recommendation on the budget resolution. So all of that's in my mind's eye as we're trying to determine 1.5 versus 1.25 versus 1.75. I know what's coming and that these demands are going to be there. So that was my attempt to kind of give you an understanding of this would be a typical exhibit that I would attach so that we could then, as a group, assess, hey, this is 1.1 million, that's 1.75. It's fair to say maybe we need to start to push some of our local receipt numbers up a little bit, but we need to be doing that in concert with one another and in consensus with one another, because we don't know what's going to happen with our licenses and permits. They are very up and down. They can vary between 20 and 25%. We are seeing a decrease in our motor vehicle excise tax. Our large commitment has gone down by $200,000. So last year, our large commitment was 3 million. This year, it's 2.8 million. And so what does that mean to our undesignated fund balance? We're seeing slower pay in our real estate. So our real estate tax, although you can lien taxes, it doesn't help you when it comes time to calculating what your undesignated fund balance is. Because if you don't collect $700,000 worth of taxes, they will not go to your bottom line. You can lien them and you secure them, but it does nothing but reduce what you have available for free cash or undesignated fund balance. And the last final point is, what we are seeing is we're seeing our penalties and interest revenue go up. Why are we seeing that go up? Because people are paying slower. And it's fine until it hits you at year end, and we're a modified cash-based financial, and therefore you can't accrue any revenue that you don't receive for your FY21 taxes after June 30th. So that's what I'm looking at when I am trying to give some sort of idea of what we should be doing with the budget resolution.
Tony, let me ask a couple questions. On the real estate, so you're projecting that from what we have in the budget for projected revenue, you anticipate we may come up short by 700 grand?
That is correct.
In that, but
Yes.
as in motor vehicle excise,
Yeah.
motor vehicle excise, you're very concerned about that, but you expect that to come in $500,000 more than projected.
Because that I can control. I can't control how people pay. Let's put it this way. Real estate tax bills are very economically driven. Motor vehicle is a little bit more difficult because if you don't pay your motor vehicle excise tax, you can't register your vehicle.
Right, but you're projecting $500,000 more than that's in the budget.
That's correct, because I'm giving a budget number for FY22
Right.
that I think is conservative, because that's something I can control.
But in real estate tax well, as far as
They
real
behave
estate,
differently.
I know, but I don't see a $700,000. Well, I don't see a $700,000 deficit in real estate tax. Because-
I beg to differ, Mr. Gallagher. In FY '20, we had a $654,000 shortfall.
Well, right now, according to the report that you gave us as of 12/31/20,
Mhm.
we've already got 51% of the projected, right?
That's great.
For this fiscal year.
That's great. What ends up happening is your third and fourth quarters, typically we have problems. I'm showing you here, this is the actual results of FY '20. It was $654,000 deficit in real estate.
I still think you could meet your goals of what we want to do in our financial plan if we had a 1.50.
Yeah,
1.50.
again, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm telling you why I'm doing what
I
I'm
mean,
doing.
no, I agree. There are some concerns and unknowns for fiscal '22 because, July is 4 months away and there's a whole year into that. If the town manager's preliminary budget has an $800,000 shortfall in that. I don't know if any ground has been made up in that since he presented that to us.
Well, I think what I said earlier is that I would be looking to push up some of these local receipt areas.
Well, that would be my reasoning for lowering it from 1.75 to 1.5 is to give you more flexibility to increase some of the revenues that you're comfortable with to get us out of that deficit. That's my whole point. So
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
anybody else have any questions?
Finance Committee, any questions?
No questions.
Nope.
So is there a budget resolution like,
Yes, you've received the document from the town manager.
I don't know if I have it.
Yeah,
Matt or Sean, do you have anything of a final budget resolution? I'm not saying I haven't received it, but I don't remember seeing it.
Trying to pull it up in my email.
the last time I received anything was prior to our last joint subcommittee meeting, and I did share that resolution with the full Finance Committee.
And the only thing that came up in our discussions last time, correct me if I'm wrong, is the target for reserves and whether or not there would be an exhibit or exhibits. And this is the exhibit right now that I'm proposing.
Okay, so the real issue before all of us tonight is to whether to stick with the 1.75% that was in the initial resolution that Council Wood put forward, or to stick with what we currently have in the current fiscal year is 1.50. Is that correct? Right. So I don't know. I think that I don't know what your committee thinks about it or Matt and Sean think about it. I mean, I don't think it's going to hamper our long-range financial planning going to 1.50%. I think it's going to help the town finance team. If we reduce it to 1.50%, it's going to help them be a little bit more flexible with the revenues.
It's going to challenge us on the capital side,
Sure,
that's for sure.
sure.
So it's where because once you put that in, you realize the next year you need to have 3-point-something% more. The moment you put in, let's say $300,000, $400,000, that means the following year you need 400,000 plus. That's the reason I'm very cautious.
Tony, can you just explain that a little bit more in regards to why we would need that going forward? If we don't have this is, probably not realistic. We don't have any major capital needs, then wouldn't that help if for the next fiscal year, if that capital reserve is still in good shape from a balance perspective, not from adding to it?
Yeah, well, I think that's what, unfortunately, you don't have that before you. If you had had that before you and you were able to wrestle with that, and next year we hope to have these sequenced better. So it's a very valid point. I think to explain why 400,000 this year becomes 4 plus something, because typically then what you'll do is you'll share, let's say we share the 400,000, half of it goes to the school system and half of it goes to the town manager goes and adds that money into his operating budget for a position or for expenses, and you start to maybe get service contracts with HVAC suppliers, and you make all these commitments. Well, the cost of living or any sort of personnel that you bring on board will typically cost you more the next year. On top of it, if you hire 1 or 2 people, then you're also going to impact your health insurance budget. So let's say the school wanted to hire 3 more people and they could do that with $200,000. Well, it's 200,000 plus they get on their steps and lanes. And so the next year you have contractual obligations. In order to keep those positions in place, you need that plus.
Right, which I understand. We also have to take in consideration that it could be a net gain 0 if one of the departments has 2 retirees and we hire 2 new people.
Absolutely, and that's always in the budget process. And so what we've done on the town side, to that point, that's a very valid point, is that's where we've made some of our strides to get a half a person here or a person there. So for instance, the police department might have 2 younger guys coming on board and they're losing a 30-year employee. All right, so that might allow us to hold that budget at like a 1% increase just to take care of contractual obligations. And because we're able to do that, that might allow the town manager to add the $50,000 into the highway department for a DPW director.
Mhm.
So that's exactly what we do. But what we do know is our revenue is over an 11-year period prior to you coming on board, Sean, we showed that the increase of our revenue is about 3.2% over a long period of time. So we got to make sure our costs don't increase any greater than 3.2. Some years a little higher, some years we're a little tight, but that's how the revenue really behaves, about a 3.2. So we got to control our labor costs and our healthcare and benefit costs. Those are our drivers. The moment we start to impact that and it increases at a rate higher than 3.2, then we are in fact starting to create what's referred to in the government side of the world as a structural deficit, meaning your costs are outpacing your revenue growth.
So between staffing management and I'll say capital replacement, barring any unforeseen capital needs, we could still manage within a budget and have a 1.5. As long as you've said on numerous occasions, as long as we exhibit fiscal responsibility and control, we should be able to, and nothing's 100% guaranteed, but we should be able to work very well within that confine.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we were to change the 1.75 to 1.5, what's the difference, right? So
It's 150, about 150,000.
there you go. So it's
That's the difference.
$150,000. Oh, yes, there's definitely enough wiggle room there. But that $150,000 becomes 75 schools, 75 towns.
Because the town manager's proposed budget for FY22 is 63.1 million.
Correct.
If you take 1.75% of that,
That's what I have on that document.
that's about 1.1 million. If you reduce it to 1.50, it's about 950,000.
That's what I showed on the document.
Right.
That's
So
exactly
the difference in that quarter point deviation is about 150,000. That we won't, that we,
Yeah.
we may get 1.3 million. And you never know. These are projections. I understand the conservative approach. I'm not against that. I'm just trying to be able to give you more flexibility in putting the underlying budget together. But Tony, correct me if I'm wrong. Of all the reserve accounts we have, for example,
Yes, sir.
if one is weaker, one is lower than another, we can move money from one account to another if we wanted to, right? There's nothing that prevents us from doing that.
No, I would say the one I would really be very, I would say, if there's an absolute, there'd be one, let's leave the general fund stabilization fund, but there's more money in capital. And there was, that we wanted to move some from the employee liability because this year we weren't gonna pay it out. We have another year to do it. Yes, we can absolutely move that around. That's correct.
So there's flexibility within those
Yeah, there is
accounts
some
if we need,
flexibility.
if we need to, and I hope we don't have to, but we've done a very good job building them all up. I think there's, what, 10 million? Is it, no, how much? There's quite a bit of money in those accounts. Have you in the town manager talked any more about the snow and ice deficit, which you have, well, was initially projected at $500,000? Is there any thought of using stabilization to stabilize the budget with that amount, or just to have it within the operating budget?
No, because again, that's, if you're gonna make a change, if you want to free up more revenue and you want to get a little less conservative with the surplus at the end of the year, I would move that number down. I would not change any other practice. Because again, you're just starting to move things around. I like to keep things simple. If you feel we have more room to maneuver, okay, then let's maneuver in the revenue. Let's not maneuver by pulling money out of any stabilization fund to take care of snow and ice deficit. That the processes work very well, and we've been disciplined and prudent in how we've dealt with that. So for instance, let's say the snow and ice deficit only ends up to be 350,000. Well, there's 150 that would fall to your bottom line at the end of the next fiscal year. That's where sometimes we pick something up, because last year we planned on 5 and it ended up being 250. Right now we're pushing 225 or so, and we can see that number growing. We see the storms that are ahead over the next week.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the questions, guys, and your thoughts on this. It's helpful.
So the underlying
Exact
issue,
science.
the underlying issue before us is whether to maintain, as proposed, keep a 1.75%
Stabilization.
stabilization target, or keep it at where it currently is in the FY21 budget, which is 1.5%. Remember, whatever we recommend goes to the council, and the council could amend it as well. And have the same discussion there.
I was comfortable with the 1.5 last year, and I'm comfortable with 1.5 again. That's Julie, but I can't speak for everybody, obviously.
So I think it would be important if both our committees go in there with an agreement. I think it'd be harder for the council not to support, the work that we're doing on these committees.
I would support keeping it 1.5.
I do appreciate both sides of the discussion. I think they're both valid, but I too, I'm comfortable with the 1.5.
Okay, so, Sean, was that a motion, Sean?
I'll make a motion, Dennis.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, to keep the target for reserves stabilization at 1.50% for fiscal '22. There's a motion by Sean, a second by Matt. Sean?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And Dennis is a yes, so the Budget and Finance Committee's 3-0.
All right, and I'll turn to the Finance Committee. Are there any last questions? Do I have a motion with the amended 1.5?
I'll
Motion
make
for
Julie,
1.5, Leo Wyatt.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Julie first and Leah seconds?
or either or.
Okay. Josh, can I get a roll call, please?
Nate,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Chris,
Yes.
Julie,
Aye.
Susie,
Yes.
thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you. So I think this will probably be on the council agenda for Tuesday night's meeting, the 23rd, for a final vote. Unless there are any other issues within the resolution we wanted to talk about. I think that was the
That was it.
thing.
I think everything else looks good.
Again,
So
thank
now-
you, guys.
Yeah, so now that we've talked about the FY22 budget, let's talk about the FY22 budget. There's more under discussions. Is there any, Tony, has there been any movement on the initial deficit projection at 800,000? Is that, are you still
No,
working?
I was waiting for this, and then I am reviewing and analyzing the local receipts. And that's why in discussion with you, I'd be looking to move up some of the areas. The deficit, I think you're aware of, is mostly being driven by the town manager trying to enact some of the, at least one particular one in the charter referring to the creating of the position of DPW director. There's also a major increase in the maintenance budget. We'll have a better number on that. We put in $350,000 for that. So we're hoping that through tightening up some of those areas, making some advancements in those areas, but maybe not as quickly as we would like, that with some revenue adjustments, some final new growth figures, that we can start to make a dent into that deficit. We anticipate having much firmer numbers for revenue sharing as of 3/1, which we will share with the council, the subcommittee, and the finance committee, and the school, so that they can know where we are as of 3/1. And then, of course, our final new growth figure that we can definitely go to the bank on would be 415, as we have done in the past. So we do see us making up some of that deficit. The question is to what extent.
And have there been continued discussions with the school department? I don't know what their final request is versus what we have currently budgeted and what the deficiency there is.
Right.
Is
So
that-
what we have a meeting, we're attempting to get a meeting scheduled, I believe, for next week. We want to really have a discussion on what their capital needs are going to be, so that we can make sure that we have the money in reserves if they have some capital items that need to be addressed. And we will also start to talk about where we are with the revenue sharing number. And again, what's tough from our part, from our perspective, is when you hear 12 new positions, that's one number, and then you hear what it is to sustain your current head count and all the contractual obligations and health insurance increases. That number, the latter number, seems like more obtainable, which is better than where we started. But sliding anything further than that, that's where the whole budget falls apart. I mean, it just falls apart.
Right. As far as the big ticket items, as you know, is the retirement assessment and the health insurance. As Plymouth, you guys are part of, obviously, the Mayflower Municipal
Yep.
Health through Plymouth
Yep.
County. Have they come out with any projected rate increases for fiscal 22 yet?
No, but I can tell you this. I'm looking inside the number. So there's two things. One, we know what the assessment is for retirement. We're already been given that number by Plymouth County. That's a given number. The other number is last year, in the end, we only incurred a approximately a 2.5 to 2.8% increase. That was the lowest increase in our health insurance rates in like years. So what I've been tracking is every month I get an update from from MMHG reporting on claims and surplus against claims as compared to prior year. And across the board, the fund is performing much better than it did last year. Okay. I used, and I think I was asked this by Mr. George last time, I think it was 4.1% as a potential increase in our health cost. Now we won't start to get numbers again during our budgetary process. We'll get numbers. So if we were able to, if that went down to 2% or 3%, then we would make the correlating adjustment in the town manager's recommended budget, which he'll submit on 4/1.
But it's possible that Plymouth County could have a 0% increase too. It's
If we have a
possible.
0, then we have 4.
Give me a new one, honey.
But that's an area where you have to be careful, because if you have a 2 last year and a 0, what goes down must come up, and vice versa. Because the year you get hit with 7%, and you know we've gotten double-digit increases. So this is one of the budgets you have to be very careful about. Because if you start to use that money for other services or to add positions, then you end up putting yourself in a position where you can't adjust and respond at future times.
Right, but when, I mean, I understand you have to project an increase, but when will you know the increase? They usually have it out way before July 1st.
Oh, yes. But the town man, okay, so what I said was, as of 4/1, we will submit the best that we know. After the 4/1 submittal, if we get information between then and the budget being finalized, we would adjust it down. So I don't anticipate us having their number by 4/1.
Okay.
I will be on top of it for sure.
Yeah. I know the GIC is been doing some work, so.
So
Well,
I'll give each meeting that I have with the finance committee, I will give an update as to where the county, where the MMHD is.
But it sounds like they're doing well. It sounds like.
Oh, they're doing very well.
Very well. So, I mean, we're certainly not facing an astronomical increase anyway. It will be,
No.
it might be, like you say, something, just because it's hard to do a 0 when you could get hit with 10 next year. You're right.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, and we're using low single digits, which I think is a good place to start.
I have a question for Tony. On the school committee, on the school budget piece, when it says on a preliminary budget message that we got, that was discussed at the town council meeting, I believe, when it says the revenue plan allows to increase the amount funded in 2021 by 2.83%, does not include the separate capital appropriation of 138,630. Was that
That's correct.
138,630 the additional money they got last?
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct. Yep, that was a supplemental appropriation.
So you took what they got minus that, and that's where you got the 2.83 number?
2.8 is what was part of the assessment voted in the original budget. The supplemental was voted in a separate order. So when I say 2.8, I'm going back to the original budget.
And is that enough to turn the page or not turn the page when you're talking about turning the page versus adding 12 positions? Do you know?
No,
What
I
they
don't know,
need
and
to-
that's why it's real important that we understand what their capital needs are gonna be. And that's why next week's meeting is gonna be beneficial, because then we
Tony,
can
I
kind of
think
hash that out.
There's also a very important need in regards to the numbers that they're looking at
Yes,
of
sir.
what it is for the all-in versus a supplemental. We need to have clarity on that because as you may remember, the
Mhm.
reason for the first supplemental was the fact that between the school committee and the town, there was just a breakdown of communication to the
Mhm.
point where the assessment figure was actually going to lead to major layoffs. So we want to get to the
Yeah.
point where we're not only not looking at a budget message that says exclusive of 138 odd, but it is a message that has what our assessment is, what our increase is, on top of what budget needs are, which, as we know on the capital, is exclusive outside of the assessment.
So here's the thing, I want to make this perfectly clear. I personally communicated at least 6 times personally regarding what number was what number.
Tony, I'm not here to lay blame on anyone. I said it was just a communication fall down.
So I would
Across the
ask
board.
someone that liaisons with the school. We're going to talk to them as normal course, but I think there maybe is a liaison issue that somehow is missed here.
Tony, I can pretty much guarantee that if you meet with them next week, what I hope you do, that will be part of the discussion. You
Yeah.
can,
Oh,
you
there's
can,
no-
you can bank,
there's-
you can bank on that, Tony. You can.
You can bank on that will be part of the discussion.
Yes.
Same here.
And I remember distinctively when we were trying to increase the assessment, it was we were told it was kind of too late. They would have to do it through this gifting or this 138,000 through capital needs.
No.
And I remember the discussion, it might have been me, it could have been Counselor George. It was certainly one of us. I have to go back and listen to the tape. We made it very clear that we wanted that 138 to be part of the base going into fiscal 22. That's what was the discussion. Or maybe you can't do that. I understand what you're doing, but
No, I have no difficulty with whatever you folks want to do. The issue, and again, this is sometimes when the different president of the council takes over. I think sometimes there's a miscommunication that just happens, not anyone's intention. When we sat down and had our budget meeting, not this past year, but the prior year, it was really the town manager's opportunity to express what we thought we had for revenue sharing and how that would be funded. And then there was a extensive dialogue in that meeting about how do we handle capital. And there was an acceptance by the school at that time stating that, we've never really came to the town with our really particular capital needs. They had been historically built into their budget. And so we agreed at that point that we would have some further discussions outside of that meeting in order to begin to pull capital out because it has a different demand cycle, if you will. So we're hoping that that is furthering that dialogue when we meet with them next week. Because
Right,
we
I
do not
noticed-
budget any capital items in our operating budget.
Right. On that note, in the discussion part of today's agenda, there's also something about the billing of invoices for town-owned buildings that the school district might be paying for. Will that be addressed as well at that meeting?
I haven't had a chance to do the research. I think it was brought up by Mr. George and I'm on it. It's just I haven't got to it. So what we want to do is make sure this a fair and equitable way that this is being done. I haven't spoken to, he's the chair now of the, Mr. Chair of the school committee.
Mr. Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Apologize, Mr. Dolan, if you're out there. And so I also want to see what the agreement is with Rainham. So we again, what we want to make sure is that whatever we're doing, we're being fair.
Right,
And
I'm just saying
equitable.
that we all know that the town buildings, the ones that are owned by the town, the non-high, not the BR high school,
Mhm.
but there are the buildings are
That's
owned by the
correct.
town, so we're responsible for certain,
Who's we?
the district, the town, and not the school district. I mean, the town and not the school district. Every school but the high school should be funded, those major projects is a responsibility of the town, are they
And
not?
again, this is my money, whatever the town wishes. That just disperses the
I mean, if
cost
the town
on.
owns the buildings, it doesn't matter what we wish. If we own them, I mean, I wish someone would pay to fix my house, but I own it, I fix it, right?
Again, what you're doing is, and whatever the practice was, is something to be addressed and looked at.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
For sure.
Is there any other fiscal 22 questions? No concerns at the moment? I know it's probably a couple weeks away from seeing the next refined budget, maybe a couple weeks, March 1st.
Yeah, you'll see the new revenue figures by March 1st.
State House giving us any indication on how they're coming along with their budget?
We're going, in the past, what has happened, the governor's budget holds a lot of water, and we're going with the governor's budget at this point in time. Which is in those original numbers that you were, I think you were provided. It certainly will be in the 3-1 numbers for sure.
Okay.
So next item, we have billing practices, which you kind of, you're still researching that then, Tony?
Yeah, I have to do I'm gonna have a discussion next week with the school and also reach out to Rainham.
So we'll keep this as a standing item on our agenda.
Absolutely.
I think, Tony, some of it was, if I remember correctly from my days on the school committee, it could be things like cutting the grass, like, the town might be billing the rec department, but also billing the school department, but, I'm not sure how many people mow the lawn type of thing, or, things like that.
I think it all stems from when the budgets were really, really decimated and people were trying to survive. So I don't
Okay.
think it was anyone's intent to be malicious in any way. It just was what it was.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item we have is revenue and revenue sharing.
Mhm.
I don't know what the questions are.
Oh, you know what? So Tony, I actually asked to be added just in case you wanted to touch on. We may not have anything to discuss. Tony, we had talked earlier and we were talking about having a full finance committee meeting on Monday, the 22nd, where we would review and discuss the revenue sharing calculation.
Absolutely.
Okay, is that still the plan?
I will be more than happy to do that for you.
Okay, and like I said, I think I just asked Ann to add it just in case we happen to touch on it in this conversation while we had the joint committees here.
I think it's a great topic for discussion.
So I'm hoping finance committee members that are here, that they can make a meeting that's next Monday, right? The 22nd. And we'll do it at 6:30, our usual FinCom time. Any
Sure.
thoughts? Sound good? Okay, so that would be. Okay, thank you. So it sounds like we'll do that. So Josh, I'll be in touch with you for the rest of the agenda for that meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
So that's all that's on the agenda for this evening. I guess, Nathan, there's
Public
no.
comment?
Well, wait, I'm not done. I just wanted to make sure when do you anticipate we should have another joint meeting? After 3-1, when the next round of numbers come out? Or do you?
Yes, I would think that would make sense. Me and Tony did come up with a window because once we discussed this revenue sharing, we're going to move on to the budget, I believe was the plan.
Okay, so Matt and Sean, we meet on the 23rd next week, the council. So I don't know what's going to be referred to us at the 23rd. So we don't need to hold a meeting next week.
No, probably the week after.
The week of March 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, let's figure March 2nd. We'll target that for our next meeting. And we should have some revised revenue numbers by March 2nd. Then. Any public comment? Is there anyone here on the meeting that wishes to speak? If you do, just start talking because I can't really see hands. I don't see any hands. I don't see anybody. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the joint meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sean, seconded by Matt. Any discussion? Sean? Yes.
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Dennis, yes. The Budget and Finance Committee meeting is adjourned, 3-0.
Go ahead, Dennis.
7:33 p.m.
Okay, sorry. All right, now let's entertain a motion from the Bridgewater Finance Committee.
Nate, can I ask a question first?
Sure.
On the budget calendar timeline that we got from Josh, On 2/22/21, it says Finance Committee review and discuss revenue sharing calculation.
Yep.
Did I miss, are we still doing that or no?
Yeah, we just talked about it a few minutes
Okay,
ago.
that's why I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
perfect. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, second.
Second.
Josh, can you give us a roll call?
Nate,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Chris,
Yes.
Julie,
Aye.
Susie.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Night.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Sean.